architecture, the art of construction, as well as the rule of architectural beauty. Some of these landmark projects include the glass towers of the Reina Sofia Museum in Madrid, the Leipzig Glass Hall, the Spire of Berlin, RSC Cardinal Theatre, the Bermondsey Wood Lane Tube Station from London Underground, and his more recent project in London are the Sainsbury Welcome Centre for the Neural Circuits and Behaviour, Messer Walking Covent Garden, and the Susie Sainsbury Theatre and Angela Burgess Bristol Hall. Ian Ritchie Architects has won more than 80 national and international awards and been shortlisted for the IREBA Sterling Prize 4 times. Alongside the work for his own firm, Ritchie has held numerous public and professional appointments relating to his public policy interests in transdisciplinary and environmentally intelligent design. He has acted in advisory and teaching capacity to government, university, and charitable trusts, and regularly lectures on topics including art, urbanism, and regeneration at venues worldwide. Ritchie was also elected Royal Academician in 1998 and Professor of Architectural at A schools in 2004, and is also an elected member of Accademia in Kunsten in Italy. And I'm very much thrilled to listen to this lecture, which has this compelling and very interesting title, which is Architectural Values, Altruism, and Innovation in a Changing World. So, Professor, when you must welcome.
Marco, just for a second.
Hello, Marco.
Perfect, and I don't have to add anything, but I give you a huge hug, not only to you, you know what I'm talking about. And also, I can see Ulrike also is connected. Ulrike Franchi, most famous light designer in the world. And so I also hug Ulrike. So we are so pleased to have you here. A lot of young people here to listen to you. They will be, you know, I think, getting your spirit. So I learned so much from you, and I keep on learning. We all wait for you here in Ischia. So, you know, whenever you can come, you got the prize last year. And one thing, also, the biography was perfect, but you are also honorary fellow at Politecnico di Milan. I have to underline as my alma mater. So, so the stage is yours, and I will enjoy.
Thank you. Can you share the screen? Can you share the screen with me so I can share my lecture?
So here, hi, and here you are already on. So you have to share screen there. From your side, share screen.
I can't.
And you upload your presentation.
I can't use it because it's disabled at your end, I think.
Oh, 1 second, maybe. If you're not the master, they give you. Okay.
So I have to share my screen.
Yeah, you allow me to use it. Yeah.
Ok, Ian Ritchie, eccolo, devi attivargli altro. Assegno organizzazione, aspetta.
There we go. Okay.
Okay, there we go. So we enjoy.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. All good. All good over there. Well, good evening, young people. It's very nice to be to be in sort of Ischia. This lecture I'm going to read, and it will be available probably tomorrow or later this evening online on our website. It's called Architectural Values, Altruism, and Innovation in a Changing World. And it stems from 20 years ago when I wrote at the height of the period of star architects, which I found them to be self-aggrandizing and selfish architectural stunt making. I gave a lecture describing why I believed there was an imperative to develop a new design paradigm, a movement in urbanism and architecture derived from a creative synthesis of science, ecology, and ethics. Then, scientists had hypothesized that human activity had altered our planet so profoundly that we have pushed the Earth and biosphere into a new geological epoch, the Anthropocene. It is defined by the idea that human activity is transforming the Earth in ways as significant and on a similar scale as some of the forces of nature and the cosmos, including asteroids. The idea of the Anthropocene has a wide range of implications, but in today's context, the most important is the collective acknowledgement and the awareness of a new ecological reality and the perception of our place and role within it. This is the first known image of man contemplating himself. The irony in this Vesalius drawing is that it's a dead man, a skeleton, contemplating a dead brain. Hopefully we won't get there too soon. But since that time, 20 odd years ago, and much more quickly than was anticipated by even pessimistic scientists, a global ecosystemic crisis has developed in which urbanization, and so inevitably architecture, is central. This challenged me to understand how our intellectual heritage shapes our actions. And the questions I addressed 20 years ago are still relevant today. They are, where are we today? How are we behaving as designers? How should we design today? And what role aesthetics? But these have now taken on a new urgency because the most critical problems, challenges, and unique opportunities we now face demand a radical shift in our built environment, our cities, our buildings, and our lifestyles. This is an image from the other side of Canary Wharf from our office. One can see the scale shift and the monotony, and to some extent, this is the financial Las Vegas. This is the gambling capital of the financial capitalist system. I think it is clear that the paradigm I am referring to is far more than some architectural style. It is much more than a conventional notion of sustainable architecture or development. It must recognize a world that has already urbanized and is globalizing with little evident shared humanity. For those of us living in economically powerful post-industrial societies, it is about a fundamental change in the way we think, behave towards each other, design and make things. In the West, we've become the product of our own economic thinking to the point where the greatest financial rewards are obtained from being irresponsible, from not caring for others or our environment, and we have exported these values worldwide. We live to produce, to consume, and to waste. This is the image of the lonely duck. It's all that's left of nature at Canary Wharf. Capitalist culture continues to deny the natural environment by exploiting it. Measuring growth, progress, and success by GDP is still totally embedded in our society's idea of civilization, despite laments about the state of our biosphere. Second. Right. This is where we are. A consumer society, avaricious technologies, and social injustice. This is a diagram I drew in 1995. 25 years on, nothing seems to have really changed. Architecture is culture. The architecture we produce and how we make our buildings reflect our worldview. At the moment, any architecture we create in the West, no matter what its visual reference or theoretical underpinning, maintains, to a greater or lesser extent, this status quo. Architectural modernism grew out of an idea of certainty and commitment, underpinned by a desire to share with as many people as possible the fruits of progress through new housing, education, and welfare facilities. This was the last real architectural movement that was founded on an idea more fundamental than finding a new aesthetic. Only recently. Yes, can't hear.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Can you turn your voice up a little bit because we cannot hear you very well.
Can you hear now?
Yeah, I think there's a problem. There must be a problem with volume here.
Can you hear now?
You want to try? Okay, it's fine. It's fine. Thank you.
Hello? Can you hear or not?
You can go on.
I can go on. Okay. Right. I've just expanded on architectural modernism being basically the last architectural movement that had more to do with society than just pure aesthetics. And it's not that long ago that there has been significant doubt as to the goodness of that direction in which the developed world has been progressing. We have seldom achieved progress in a universally agreed sense. The term is too loaded politically, since many of our notions of progress are still achieved at the expense of the quality of life of others elsewhere in the world. Seen here in Mumbai, a water pipe feeding a very wealthy part of Mumbai, but the water is not accessible to the poor people. Architecture is culture. And we can look at phones and we can question whether there is any difference, cultural difference, being held in our hands these days globally. It is therefore difficult to find a consensual definition in a global society, and the notion of progress has been inconsistent with a defined end. Now, however, there is a beginning to be a collective awareness that any notion of progress that does not recognize that we are sharing this planet with the others and with all life, and that every one of our thoughts and actions will affect our environment, will lead us down a fatal path. So that collective understanding is beginning to be real, but we don't have the mechanisms in which to manipulate it in the right direction or in a direction that makes sense to everyone. So my next question is, how are we behaving as designers? This is a conventional diagram of sustainability. We have economic growth, social justice, and environmental protection. But sustainability is so general a term, interpreted and appropriated by all types of governments, companies, institutions, and agencies, as to render it almost meaningless. The label can be applied to almost anything one can think of. Although the complexity of relations between the environmental, architectural, and the social are increasingly evident, complex ecological problems are still reduced and oversimplified to sets of separate environmental issues. This focus limits the understanding of environmental and architectural issues as primarily technological functional, leading to the idea that environmental problems can be dealt with through technical fixes. Architects are still often principal actors in presenting greenwashed images of sustainable architecture. However, I think most designers believe they are essentially doing good. Nowadays, when we attempt to solve a problem or derive a design solution, we try to expand our analyses to include a more complex global vision of interdependence. But in simple terms, most of us believe that a sustainable approach is one which gets more value out of less material, pollutes less, wastes less, and recycles more and does not reduce the next generation's choices. Yet to do this is very difficult. This is an honorable objective, but a relatively naive approach. Moreover, at the moment, there are inescapable contradictions between producing architecture within the present economic model and helping to create a more intelligent world in which ecological, moral, and social altruism rather than economic imperatives prevail. The tragedy is that in our present society, design remains judged both qualitatively and quantitatively by the question, does it attract the consumer? Designers may think they have more noble standards of providing functional artifacts that are environmentally and culturally sensitive. But are we deluding ourselves? Do we actually need most of the things we design? Do they simply serve to perpetuate the status quo, which we view, all of us, as unsustainable? Humanity and intelligence have as much to do with the process of decision-making and progress as with the tangible artifacts that result from our application of science, technology, and economics to matter. So how should we design today? This requires a new economic model to be framed globally, an understanding that sharing is of value, more valuable than taking, and that we develop the environmental technologies which are genuinely sensitive. That may give us a genuine future where sustainability actually means something. So this question, how should we design today, is based upon the assumption that our ecological and socio-economic irresponsibility cannot continue. Cities are growing everywhere as population increases. And because of their undeniable and extensive effects on the biosphere, they may be considered a primary source of global ecological degradation. The process of planetary urbanization comes with a subsequent increase in environmental pressures as the demand increases for food and water, energy and material resources to provide shelter, infrastructure, and transport. The human exploitation that degrades the surrounding agricultural lands and recreational landscapes and creates industrial wastelands leads to additional economic, socio-political, and humanitarian problems. We are now seeing migrations on the scale of cities, and these will increase in time unless we begin to work together. Yet cities are part of the global ecosystem, and we are all aware that now, for the first time, more humans live in cities than the countryside. So the city is the predominant human nest, and this social, ecological reality will not change for the foreseeable future. We must seriously reconsider the nature of these nests, since their immediate qualities not only affect us, but cities and architecture are simultaneously central to the problem of the global ecology and central to the solution. They will be decisive. Cities will be decisive in defining our ecological future. Can cities evolve to become better balanced with nature, to give us cities with a healthier culture? Perhaps we should reconsider the city as an organism, an ecopolis. Yeah? Pardon? Sorry. Perhaps we should reconsider. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, somebody was interfering, sorry. Perhaps we should reconsider the city as an organism, an ecopolis, embodying ethics, concepts and programs for ecological restoration. To effectively address major environmental issues, many interrelated ecological, architectural, and social aspects must be considered in all aspects of urban and building design. These include the local climate and bioregional conditions, the locally available natural resources, ecological flows and cycles of materials, energy, water, nutrients, and waste. The mantra in the late 1960s was Design with Nature, a book by Ian McHarg. And now I would argue it is nature first. It's not sufficient to design with nature, but to place nature first. The design and building process must be addressed. Urban and landscape integration, building occupation, use and reuse, adaptation to context and cultures, as well as cultural and socioeconomic factors. This is not to ignore technical issues such as CO2 emissions, but to place them within a given context and connect it into a consistent and coherent whole, while preserving ecological and architectural qualities. Understanding the context must be the first investigation of architecture. The context is physical, intellectual, and sensual. Architecture has a haptic and physical quality. It is fundamentally a material construct. The architectural process and architecture itself is synthesis, not separation. The synthesis of ideas, of people, of materials, and ultimately a sense of man's union with nature. Creativity and innovation in architecture work through the investigation of memory, context, the nature of materials which we transport and transform to build, and the way buildings are constructed and their relation to their environment. Better design makes for better architecture, but we must also ask ourselves whether we can influence the evolution of design in general, and if so, how to go about it. For example, what is the relationship between architectural design and industrial innovation? Despite pretensions to our importance, architects rarely initiate new directions. Our power is essentially formal, because that is where architects' skills have been applied most significantly until now. Engineers are generally better positioned to imagine and help develop new technical products. Architects are rarely in the front line to prescribe or determine in any consequential sense the context, use, production, cost relationship, profitability, marketing, durability, ecology, etc., of the materials from which we make architecture, and thus the possible architectures that could exist. Some of us try, and just occasionally we are successful in influencing industry and thus potentially architecture. I consider this now an imperative that we do so, but how can we do it? Until now, improvements in materials and construction have been largely based upon one single objective: to be able to better predict their performance, thereby improving performance and reducing cost. This is no longer sufficient to meet the demands of the new paradigm. The goal of building a culture that increases the Earth's biological wealth instead of depleting it. I'll repeat that. Our goal should be to build a culture that increases the Earth's biological wealth instead of depleting it. We need new materials capable of endless recycling and low energy production methods. There must be a basic redesign of products in conjunction with new standards for recycling, toxic elimination, energy and resource efficiency, dematerialization. And as we begin to analyze the eventual transformations in product life cycles and industrially produced material with the potential for endless utility and human health and safety, it is evident that new intellectual and creative alliances are needed in our industry and professions. Architects, engineers, and designers must no longer regard themselves as members of autonomous disciplines, but must collaborate with each other and with chemists and physicists, funders, politicians, and industry to seek more ambitious outcomes to meet this new paradigm that's so necessary. Recognizing our interdependencies will begin to enable such new alliances. The definition of environmentally positive design might be where any manufactured byproduct of the design solution has a net contributing value when analyzed in terms of environmental and social impact. So what role aesthetics? There are increasing numbers of studies into the neurological basis of relationships between the architectural environment and the emotions and physiology of the people who inhabit it. We are beginning to be able to ask ourselves what kind of architecture and urban design has the capacity to sustain and nourish a meaningful human existence, and get answers based on science rather than current design fashion or political ideology. We now know that architecture can be a catalyst for wide socio-cultural and environmental transformations, for good or bad. Buildings are not inert. They promote, generate, and make possible cultural and ecological interfaces. This implies that architecture is a process with intrinsic dynamics, complexities, and ecologies, and also implies a much greater accountability for the architect, because what is designed inevitably creates a relationship between the built environment and the life that goes on within and around it. While watching a log burn, we can see how change reveals the beauty of the flame and the log as it slowly transforms into ash. The water that forms a wave breaks, foams, and reforms as a retreating surface always comes back in part as a new wave. These wonderful phenomena are examples of the nonlinear world that nature presents to us. I am convinced that beauty is in large measure nonlinear. Creating architectural beauty may come from allowing the play of nature's nonlinearity and its entropic qualities. My view of architecture and architectural space is that it is intrinsically dynamic and should exhibit this phenomena of nonlinearity. Architecture is part of nature, not a part of it, or apart from it. There has to be a contribution from the surface which is beyond reflection and beyond itself as a skin. Glass is the answer, but what was the question is something I wrote in 1995. And yet we see architects worldwide assume that glass is still the answer without asking any questions. So this transformation, the quality to transform, not just with reflection, but more, showing a sensitivity to light and to shadow, to burning sun or pouring rain, to change, albeit slowly, not to stay the same forever. And developing or choosing materials that allow the environment to change the surface is an aesthetic design decision, which embraces not only the appearance, but becomes a metaphor for designing with rather than against nature, of beginning to unwind the long recent past and to put nature first. Aesthetic intent is useless work, but has as much, if not more, impact upon how we feel than economy or efficiency. In any project, efficiency and economy are rightly expected by most clients and represent the two tangible aspects of time and money. Combined with spatial organization and appropriate materials, these should provide fitness for purpose, but architects should provide more. Aesthetics involves the designer in investigation, research, and rejection of ideas of space, feeling, and appearance. These take time. It's the process students and young architects go through while at university, but often cannot do that post-university in an environment of an architect's office, which demands performance, efficiency, and economy of product. This research takes time and will never appear to profit the client directly. And often the client sees no real point in paying for them. However, designers must invest in them. If these intangible issues are driven by the moral dimension of aesthetics, embracing the idea that we design not just to satisfy the immediate needs of our client, but for future generations, then the aesthetic issue becomes far more significant. The power of aesthetics is measured in the mind, sometimes the heart, but not in the bank balance or the electricity meter. The lack of it is like drip water torture. It numbs the mind. It is the lack of this aesthetic dimension which renders the cumulative effect of many parts of the built environment and of our cities so demoralizing. By giving value to the moral aesthetic, as well as the appearance of the work, the resulting architecture or urban planning will indicate clearly how responsibly we have acted with regard to future generations. The aesthetic dimension must include all our senses too. It is these hidden dimensions as much as those that we see that determine the quality of life. How many of us designers regularly consider the impact of what we design upon the health of the mind? Traditionally, we have had to justify our design decisions to our clients through measurable things, economy and efficiency. But how do we measure the effect of our designs upon the mind of the viewer or user? Vitruvius gave us firmness, buildability, commodity, usefulness, and delight, beauty. We have learned to measure these elements of commodity and firmness, and we design to rules and predictable outcomes. Now some people are trying to measure delight. But to do so, we have to look at the effect of design upon our senses and thus our minds far more seriously. I believe that we must redefine and expand the criteria for determining whether or not design solutions are functional and meaningful. Functionality is ultimately impact in a world where our goal is the quality of life and a healthy ecosystem. Meaning reveals values within the ultimate art of all, the art of living together in our homes, our community, and on our planet. At the same time, architecture, because of its difficulty and expense, is a profession dependent upon individuals, organizations, and communities with enough wealth and power to commission architects. Often architects find themselves complicit in accommodating and reinforcing those with power and privilege. If, however, we live together on this planet is to change, this will require a new type of education of the architect and of the clients, developers, planners, and politicians who hold the purse strings, the money, and for economists to reject the current economic model based upon exploitation and profit for its own sake. The poor do not need the rich and wealthy, but the rich do need the poor. This is by no means an impossible dream. In my own practice, we have sought to challenge clients and their ethics, and many projects have disappeared as a result, unbuilt. But occasionally we find clients that share our ethos. Most recently in Malta, One such enlightened client engaged with our aspirations to synthesize aesthetics and ethics with the science of construction and ecology, to start with gardens, not buildings, not to use traditional air conditioning despite the local climate and global warming, to have openable windows, not to build high with dependency upon lifts, to plan the layout of buildings such that they shade each other, and to help educate politicians, consultants, and manufacturers and builders in advancing a common and intelligent future heritage for that island. So in conclusion, the discipline of architecture is complex and in some ways analogous to the human condition. It demands that we continually address the same basic questions while expecting diverse answers that are appropriate to specific times and places. What distinguishes architecture from other kinds of art is that it intertwines with life itself in such a fundamental and significant way. Like the god Janus, we now sit on the boundary between the past and the future, and we need to up the ante because we all live together on this one earth, and currently there is no plan B. Some billionaires might think there are. At this critical moment of human history, we are finally coming to realize that all the human and non-human things we once imagined were separate: biology, architecture, science, morality, law, politics, religion, finance, technology, are in fact inseparable from each other. It has become clear that we can never isolate ourselves from the non-human world, that our cultures, our technologies, and nature are irreversibly entwined, and we shall live or perish together. We now also know that our minds are inseparable from our bodies, despite the accidental consequence of Descartes' thinking, which separated man from nature. Interdependence, not independence. Collectivism, not individualism, has to be our way forward. And progress is nothing but the victory of laughter over dogma. The late writer Barry Lopez expressed the present paradigm very clearly. Because mankind can circumvent evolutionary law, it is incumbent upon him, mankind, to develop another law to abide by if he wishes to survive. He must learn restraint, not because he must, because he lacks inventiveness, but because herein is the accomplishment of the wisdom that for centuries he has aspired to. Having taken on his own destiny, he must now think with critical intelligence. Say that again. He must now think with critical intelligence about where to defer. I will leave you with one final thought. Consider a tree growing in the ground and not one imprisoned and anchored high up on a building. It is beautiful and silent until it tells us that the wind is blowing. It is a visible haven for insects and birds. It captures light to grow and to provide us with oxygen. It is an almost invisible haven for fungi, and when it begins to end its seasonal cycle, it returns food to the earth while transforming the color of the landscape. And of fungi, neither plant nor animal, the story of their role in creating and maintaining our environment and our bodies and our health is just beginning to unfold. There is so much for us to understand and learn from nature. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ritchie, for your presentation and your contributions. I will just ask if anyone has some questions or remarks to make.
Thank you. Just a moment.
1 second.
Professor, can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you and hear you. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your lecture. It was, of course, very interesting, and I find a lot of inputs that I would like to talk about. I'm signing some things that we will talk soon live here. By the way, you say something in the middle very important. But you pose the question. You say, do we really need all these objects? So we are living in a society that is an industry of things that actually we don't need. So we have to cultivate value, as you say in the end, a value that maybe we don't need all these objects. Maybe we don't need to change every month the shoes or a jacket or anything like that. So we have to, just to confirm that I totally agree with you that we have to invest in communication and in values that goes against this kind of
frozen link. Can you hear me? Hello?
intellectual meaning.
The connection's gone. I find it difficult. I can't hear.
Yeah, I think their internet is quite bad.
Yeah, it's quite hard to follow their sound.
Yeah.
Maybe reconnect.
Yeah, they're doing it now, I think.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Hello. Yep.
Sorry, Professor. I don't know what's happened.
One second.
Okay, you can continue.
Okay.
Sorry for this mistake.
We take a license, full license for not having this mistake, but by the way, it's happening. So, that was not a question, it was just a step in the lecture that you do that touched me, something that remembered me that we have to increase the debate on the values, so that if we change the values of the things that appear in our life, maybe the result will change. So thank you again, and I give the microphone to
Okay, just to say thank you again for your contribution. It was very interesting, like some many remarks. Yeah, if you had an answer for him, you will have. I think we have like a couple of minutes more.
I couldn't hear that very clearly. The link is pretty acoustically awkward, this end. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Increase the start.
Can you hear me or not?
Yes. Now yes, yeah.
Now you can. I think the the big question which was raised there was the question of what are we doing making all this stuff? And that, in a way, is the big paradigm. We've been Homo faber, man the maker, for millennia. And now we realize that the making of things has no end game, not really. And it's depleting the planet, it's destroying our environment. So we have to rethink fundamentally what we're doing. And that goes for architecture. The ability to build buildings in the future, maybe for fewer people, fewer architects. And architects have this great quality from their training. They're able to synthesize a lot of things at the same time. And that's the great skill that we possess and makes us able to think through new scenarios, I think, with politicians, with clients, and with many other people. And that should be a role and part of our education and brought forward, because it's those values, what I call the hidden values, not the optical, the ones you see in the aesthetics, that are so fundamental now. I mean, really fundamental.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the answer. I also had like some remarks to make and some little objections to make, but I will be more than happy to share it with you when you are here.
Okay, that'd be good. All right. Well, I hope it wasn't too. I hope it was okay to follow in English. I apologize, my Italian.
It wasn't a problem with the English. It was a problem with the connection that was kind of like going.
As I say, we will try and get the lecture up on our website tonight or tomorrow or over the weekend.
Thank you so much. Well, I think we got the big picture, all of us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Ciao. Ciao.